Good morning, everyone. My name is Aisha Hani, and today I will be presenting my final assessment titled Analyzing the Impact of Trump Tariff on Global and Malaysian Supply Chain. Basically, I will be sharing how Trump trade policies shook up the world economy and, more importantly, what it means for Malaysia. Now, let's start with a quick background. In 2018, Trump introduced tariffs which are basically extra taxes on goods coming into the US. The main target was China because the US felt that China had unfair trade practices. The most famous one was 25% tariff on 250 billion worth of Chinese imports. And of course, China it didn't just sit quietly. They responded with a tariff of their own. This triggered what we call a trade war. And since supply chains are global, the effects are spread worldwide. So companies had to rethink how and where they produce their goods. In this presentation, I will focus on three effects: supply chain disruption and relocation, trade-off division strategies, and specific impact on Malaysia trade and investment. So let's begin with the first effect. First effect is disruption and reliance. So before tariff, China was known as the world factory, and many companies rely heavily on Chinese factories because of their skilled workers, strong infrastructures, and big supplier networks. But when tariffs made Chinese goods more expensive, companies had to change strategies. Firms kept some production there but added another country like Vietnam, India, or even Malaysia to spread their risk. For example, Apple moved some iPhone and iPod production to Vietnam and India. Number two is Intel expanded operation in Malaysia to spread our risk. Number three is even brands like Nike shifted more sourcing to countries like Vietnam and Indonesia. For Malaysia, this was a good thing. Our electronic sector is in Penang and Johor saw new investment, but at the same time, competition was very tough, especially with Vietnam and Mexico also attracting companies. So overall, this shows how global supply chains started moving from just cost efficiency to also risk management and resilience. The second effect was trade diversion, or what we call as bypass strategies. Because tariffs made Chinese export to the US more expensive, many companies tried to find their loopholes. For example, some Chinese steel was sent to Vietnam and given try minor changes and then re-exported to the US as a Vietnamese steel. And in Malaysia, electronics components were assembled here before being sent to the US, making them look like a Malaysian export. This helped avoid tariffs, but it also created new problems. And custom officers in the US started checking shipment more strictly. So that means more paperwork, longer delivery times, and higher compliance risks. So for Malaysia, it was a double-edged sword. Yes, we saw a higher export, but we also risk being labeled as just transshipment hub, which could damage our trade reputation. That's why the Malaysian government pushed companies to make sure export were genuine value-added products, not just relabeled as Chinese goods. Let's zoom in into how Malaysia was impacted overall. On the opportunity side, our export to the US jumped by the 11% in 2019. Industries like electronics, machinery, and even furniture saw a higher demand. And in Johor, some furniture factories were even working overtime just to ship before tariff deadline. Malaysia also attracted new foreign investment. Big players like Intel and Micron expanded in Penang, turning it into a semiconductor hub. But of course, there was challenges too. Since we import a lot of raw materials, the tariff indirectly raised costs for inputs like steel and machinery. Economics even warned that Malaysia's GDP growth could drop by 1% per year if the trade war dragged on. So yes, we gained from diverted trade, but at the same time, we were very exposed to the global risks. The government focused on diversification. By signing trade deals like RCEP and CPTP, Malaysia reduced reliance on just the US and China and opened doors to Asian, Japan, South Korea, and more. They also encourage industry to move up the value chain, meaning they don't just assemble basic part but invest in automation, R&D, and digitalization. And importantly, support was also given to SMEs so that smaller firms could also adopt technology and join global supply chains, not just the big multinational. Let's put all of this together into keen insight. If we step back, we can see that these effects are all connected. The China plus one shift create opportunities for Malaysia. The trade diversion gave us a short-term gains but came with reputational risks, and the investment inflows boost growth but also made us vulnerable to higher costs. So the key insight here is these tariffs force Malaysia to really see both its strength and weaknesses. So our strength is in electronics and strategic location, but our weakness is being too dependent on imported inputs and external markets. So the lesson that we learned, Malaysia needs supply chain that are resilient, diversified, and innovative, not just cheap. So let me conclude. Trump tariff reshaped global supply chain and Malaysia was right in the middle of it. Looking ahead, Malaysia should focus on number one, diversifying export market so we are not over-reliant on just the US or China. Number two is moving up the value chain with automation with innovation and building supply chain resilience and by strengthening logistics and suppliers. Number four, maintaining balanced diplomacy through dialogue, not retaliation. Number five is supporting SMEs to be part of the global supply chain story. So if Malaysia does this, we won't just survive future trade conflicts, we will actually become a stronger, more competitive player in the global supply chain network. So that's all from me. Thank you for your time.